Yes, you. Have you ever played a video game? Don't lie, I saw you playing Minecraft that one time, you can't sneak it past me. In the majority of video games, you will have something adjacent to an inventory. Perhaps a place for you to keep special items, or something like Skyrim, where you just have an endless void that can hold thousands of cheese wheels for you to pull out at just the right moment. Dude's literally like, need something? And the heroic Dragonborn is like, cheese. The question I have for you is simple. What would life be like if you were to have a video game inventory? How would it actually affect your life? Boy, oh, do I have some fun ideas for you. Hi! Thanks so much for letting me borrow your screen. My name is Orido, and I think this world kind of sucks, so let's build a new one. Alright, admittedly, this is a very vague question. Ultimately, a video game inventory can take on a lot of different forms, so we're going to break it up. I'm going to be using 3 games as examples for this video. Escape from Tarkov, Minecraft, and old school RuneScape. This may sound like an arbitrary list, but I will have you know it took me at least 10 minutes to come up with it. Which isn't like a super long time, but it's like... Listen, it makes sense, just give me a minute. There's a handful of very important differences between these 3 games. I'm going to go over the main differences, specifically what's important to us. After that, we'll go over what the rules are. When I say rules, I'm referring to exactly how this will be injected into the real world. If this doesn't make sense, sit tight, we will get there soon. Escape from Tarkov uses a grid-based inventory. This is the most realistic of the 3 options. Essentially, each item takes up a number of cells. For instance, a roll of duct tape is small enough to take up only 1 cell, whereas something substantially larger, such as a metal fuel tank, may take up a total of 6 slots, 2 wide, 3 tall. A good handful of games use this type of inventory, and as a gamer, it's one of my personal favorites. In all fairness, I like games that hate me, still working through that with my therapist. There's ways around this, such as backpacks. A backpack will take up a number of slots in your inventory, while offering you an entire separate inventory to make use of. For instance, a heavy-duty backpack will take up 25 slots total, 5 by 5. However, it'll give you an additional 32 slots, specifically in the way of a 4x4 grid and 4 separate 2x2 grids. Now, I need to be fair here and say that many of the backpacks in this game don't actually give you any additional space profit. What do I mean by that? Essentially, a lot of storage containers will take up the same amount of space they give. Some will even give you less space, such as the tactical sling bag, which takes up 9 slots but only gives you 6. How is this useful? Because you can equip the bags. Essentially, your backpack is your inventory. You don't have any random inventory floating around like in most games. Every time you play, you'll have to equip a backpack of some type, which will decide your inventory size. Summary for Tarkov, it's somewhat realistic. I feel like this is a game that we all know and love, and the inventory of Minecraft has many videos made about it. In the quickest summary possible, you have 36 inventory slots, 37 if you include your offhand. Each of those slots can hold up to 64 duplicates of the same item, given that it is a stackable item. Things like weapons, armors, and boats, for instance, do not stack. If you were to max out your inventory, you can hold 2,368 items. Said an absolute noob. Stop commenting, I caught it, I saw it, I'm aware. Yes, we have mobile storage containers in the way of shulker boxes. A shulker box can be obtained in survival and turns 1 inventory slot into 27. Now, if we were to max out our inventory, we have 63,936 stackable items. Not bad, considering each of those items can be upwards of an entire 1 meter cube. Now, this won't be all that huge in the final calculation, but that's for later. Point is, that's a lot of blocks. However, Minecraft has a small exception when it comes to inventory management. For anybody who has played, you'll know that when you break a block, it shrinks down and hovers. This is immediately a very small detail to take into account, but when it comes to how much space we have, I feel that it matters quite a bit. Now I have to warn you, the next portion of this video may be a little bit much for some viewers. I'm giving you a warning, I'm bringing it up. The Minecraft movie trailer. It won't be long, I swear. Essentially, in this short scene from the trailer, we saw that the log became very small. After some quick pixel measuring, the edge of this baby log is about 13 2/3 the size of the father log. Assuming a single log block is exactly 1 meter, we're looking at about 17 millimeters in each direction. If we were to assume that a block can be condensed down into a 17 millimeter block upon harvesting, that means that items are actually the largest thing that we'll have to store. I'll break this down more in the final portion of the video, and again, I apologize for what I've done, bringing up the Minecraft movie trailer and everything. I'm sorry. Conclusion. Minecraft's inventory is still insane, but maybe slightly less so? Honestly, I feel like this concept deserves its own video. I know this may be infuriating for some viewers, but I'll ultimately lay some ground rules for this in the last chapter. If you're interested in this concept, let me know in the comments. Or if you hate me, do that, whatever. This may feel like a weird introduction in comparison to the rest. Simply put, in old school RuneScape, you have exactly 28 slots for the entire game. There are some exceptions to this rule, but often they are very specific. For instance, if you have a rune pouch, you can put 4 stacks of different runes into one slot. A looting bag can store 28 items in one inventory slot, but it's designed to only be used in one portion of the game, the wilderness. This will make things a bit tricky, but that's not what I'm interested in just yet. There's a tiny little mechanic in RuneScape's inventory that makes it quite the outlier here. The stack limit. You see, a small number of items in RuneScape can stack. Examples include gold pieces, feathers, runes, things that are either A, very small, or B, would be really annoying to not stack. Given that each spell takes at least 2 runes, being able to only carry 14 low-level spells worth of runes and nothing else would be not really what I call playable in this game. But then comes a fun little quirk. The quantity system in RuneScape uses a 32-bit integer and has no artificial cap. When it comes to an integer like this, one singular bit is designed to just say whether or not the number is negative, leaving us with a 31-bit integer, and one singular number is reserved for 0. With this in mind, the highest number a 32-bit integer can count to is equal to 2 to the power of 31 minus 1, which means we can hold 2,147,483,647 feathers. Just for fun, that many feathers, assuming the average weight of a feather is 0.0082 grams, would weigh about 17.6 thousand kilograms, or otherwise 38.8 thousand pounds, also known as about 6.5 Chevy Suburbans. Conclusion for RuneScape's inventory system. It's not a huge problem, but when it is, it's the problem. Now we can finally wrap this all up together, put a real metric on just how useful a video game inventory would really be. Let's talk about the rules. Did I just break it? Hold on. I'm so glad that you can make it this far. You know, if you are this far in the video, then I assume that you like the video, you know, which means that you should probably like the video. You know, subscribe. Subscribe to the channel. You know, we're getting to some bigger numbers. Maybe the digit will have 4 numbers. Wait. That was the dumbest thing I've ever done. So here's the basic guidelines I'll be using for this little thought experiment. First of all, you are the only person who has this capability. For whatever reason it may be, you're simply built different. With exceptions that directly correlate to the inventory, I will not be considering any other mechanics of the game. For instance, if items change size between the real world and the inventory, or if your inventory will actually weigh you down. In both Escape from Tarkov and Old School RuneScape, your travel is affected by how much you have in your inventory. In Minecraft, as I said before, I will be assuming that a block will be reduced down to a 17mm cube. My reasoning for this in Minecraft specifically is actually much larger than the context of this video, so I won't be going into great detail as to why, but I will give a rough explanation. Video games use symbolism to make things more readable. For instance, something may glow if you're able to interact with it, or the game may make it larger so it's easier to see. In seeing a real-world representation of how Minecraft would look, regardless of potential opinions, I'm going to assume that the trailer uses a real-world version and the game is making it larger for playability. And finally, of course, I'm not going to consider items that exist only in the game. For instance, We will be considering the use of backpacks like in Tarkov, but I won't be considering the usage of shulker boxes, as I cannot buy a shulker box from any stores near me. Correct me if I'm wrong, I would really love a shulker box. So, with that in mind, let's see how useful each one would be. Starting in order, I think that Escape from Tarkov speaks for itself. It's a very gritty game, and thus it does a pretty good job of resembling the real world, at least in comparison to the games we've chosen here. Sure, you can hold a main hand item and an offhand item, as well as some other specialized gear, but being able to store a variable amount of items in a backpack, I mean, that's just life, man. I also, contrary to popular belief, get tired faster when running while carrying a bunch of stuff as well. How useful would Escape from Tarkov's inventory be in the real world? Not much, really. 2 out of 10. I play video games to escape, not re-experience life. Okay, what about Minecraft? Well, if we want a real, genuine interpretation of what we're working with, we'll need our good friend, math. When trying to consider some of the largest items that can fit into one slot, my immediate thought was armor. However, unfortunately, armor is one of those items that doesn't stack. Roughly, it does seem like items like boats, beds, and equipment that wouldn't perfectly fit into a 1 meter cube will be non-stacking. I'll keep them in mind, but they ultimately don't serve the purpose we need. We're looking for the heaviest item that isn't a block. Since most things seem to vary rather greatly, I'll be using the old tried and true gold ingot. Gold ingots are kind of perfect, as gold bars are standardized and traded as a form of currency across banks and bullions. These are called good delivery bars, and they weigh 12.4 kilograms or 27.4 pounds. Perfect. Let's math. Assuming we no longer have access to shulker boxes, we're back down to our item limit of 2,368 items. If we were to fill our hypothetical inventory with gold ingots, specifically those representing standard good delivery bars, we'd be looking at almost 30,000 kilograms, or otherwise nearly 65,000 pounds. Or a much more relatable metric, about 11 Chevy Suburbans. And of course, this is without breaking a sweat. That's pretty neat. What about RuneScape? Sure, we don't have nearly the same selection, but 2.47 billion is a big number. So big that I can have my editor scrolled across the screen to make it look super duper big. Okay, let's see. Now, there's a lot of items in RuneScape, but I was hoping for some that are relatively standard to real life. In my search, I found a handful of good contenders: feathers, arrows, and nails. To test the limits, I want the heaviest item from this list while still using the average version of that item. We already know that a feather weighs about 1/1000th of a gram, so an arrow has to be heavier, right? I mean, it literally has a feather on it. Well, it is. A quick Google search says that on average, we're looking at about 16 grams. Perfect. A nail, on the other hand, is only going to be about in the ballpark of a single gram, so the arrow it is. These ones are extra special as well. Since these 2 billion items all fit into one slot, we're going to want a lot of options to fill each of the 28 slots. And of course, arrows come in many varieties. Technically, these should weigh slightly different amounts. However, this is often only the arrowhead that's different, and we don't even have a metric for most of the materials used. For this reason, I'll be treating them as if they are the same weight. Okay, if we use the 8 tiers of arrows, spanning from bronze all the way to dragon, we have surprisingly 8 types so far. We grab the brutal and the fire versions of each of those, and now we have 24 total varieties. Finally, we can get a little bit spicy and grab ice arrows, ogre arrows, training arrows, and broad arrows, specifically over 2 billion of each of those. Finally, we have a grand total of over 60 billion arrows of slightly differing variety. And our final weight clocks in at 962 million kilograms, or otherwise 2.12 billion pounds. Dude, we almost hit a gigagram. I don't know if that's actually a word, but if it's not, it's now my word. Gigagram. Oh, and of course, that's like literally over 300,000 Chevy Suburbans. It's literally more than 5 Titanics. Like the Titanic, but if you put the halves back together, but there's 5 of them. Okay, so we have some fun little metrics to finally answer our question. How would a video game inventory change your life? The obvious from the start answer is, it depends on the video game, but we took the extra step. If we're talking like Escape from Tarkov, basically nothing. If we're talking old school RuneScape, Very useful, but somewhat niche. When it comes to being able to hold 28 generic items, that's cool. It's not a huge deal. I'm sure many people are skilled and trained enough to actually do that, honestly. However, if you're looking to get into the arrow selling business, boy, do I have an idea for you. And finally, the most versatile. If we were talking about a Minecraft inventory, woof! As long as we're talking about roughly handheld objects, you can hold thousands of them in your little pocket dimension that you always have immediate access to. Given you can only hold 37 distinct items, you can still hold 64 of each of them, which is wild. Can you imagine what buying groceries would look like? It would be like at least slightly less inconvenient. I mean, not extremely. If we're talking about like only handheld items, you could probably hold a pretty decent amount of them just by like holding a bag or something. You can hold really heavy stuff like gold, but I don't have any gold. And I mean, 37 bags is a lot. I could probably hold like 10 at most. So I guess it's like 3.7 times better. Huh. Maybe it's not that useful after all. I guess the gold is impressive. I guess.
Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed this video, then maybe you'll like another one from me. There's a couple on screen right now if you want to check those out. I hear they're pretty good from an unbiased source. It's me. I'm the source. I'm not biased. I know what you want. I know you want to see them. Click on one. Do it. Do it. Thanks.